everyone. I'm Christina McTine, and I'm a librarian with the marketing department here at LA County Library. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our panelists. I will begin with Skye Patrick, who is our county librarian. Skye was appointed to her role in 2016. She is responsible for the library's 86 library locations, its 15 vehicle mobile fleet, and resources that are used by more than 3.4 million customers across LA County. From the beginning of her tenure, Skye prioritized community engagement through visioning sessions, inviting the public to share their ideas for local libraries. Her mission has been to break down barriers and expand access by developing programs that meet the needs of LA County's diverse communities. Under Skye's leadership, LA County Library received the 2023 National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the nation's highest honor given to museums. She's also a recipient of the 2025 James Irvine Leadership Award, which recognizes leaders whose innovative solutions to critical state challenges improve people's lives, create opportunity, and contribute to a better California. Skye remains dedicated to reinforcing the library's role as a hub for information, literacy, civic engagement, learning, and belonging. Tonight, Skye will be interviewing Beverly Mahone, also known as Auntie Bev, the vocabulary builder. Beverly Mahone is the Auntie Bev to nearly 2.5 million followers across all social media platforms. She is a veteran journalist who has spent more than 40 years in radio and television news. She has worked as a radio news anchor, talk show host, television reporter, videographer, and as an assignment editor. After leaving the business in 2006, she decided to create a media marketing consulting business where she coached baby boomer women on how to market and promote themselves for media exposure via creating videos. She currently works as a part-time writing consultant at a university in North Carolina and hosts online public speaking and writing sessions on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. She has written for or been covered by HuffPost 50, Forbes.com, and US News and World Report. Her video podcast, The Boomer Beat, airs on YouTube. And you can learn more about her by visiting her website, allwordsmatter.com. Skye, I am so excited to hand this program over to you.
Thank you, Christina, and welcome, Auntie Bev. We'll get into our questions in just a second, but as is customary, we do have a land acknowledgement here in Los Angeles County. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tuktaviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash people. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardships of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, cultures, and communities of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples, local tribal governments, including in no particular order, the Fernandino Tactaviam Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Quiche Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. Beverly Mahone, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to California.
Yes. I'm jet lagged. It's like 10
I
o'clock over here.
bet you are. We're so thrilled to have you. And as you mentioned, there are quite a few people who are really excited to hear this interview, and hopefully it'll be not only informative, but also inspiring. I went to the TikTok because I am a person of a certain age and got to see some of your videos and some of the things that you do. And I think it's quite amazing. Let me ask you, one of the ones that I saw I found really intriguing, and I think it's worth sharing with our audience. What made you start this whole secondary business? I mean, really, it's like a second career for you. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement, but it really didn't start that way. And I'm going to try to make a long story relatively short. It was Mother's Day weekend, May of 2021. And I had lost my full-time job. COVID was running rampant. And I was trying to figure out what I could do to try to help my husband maintain the household financially. My grandson happened to be over at the time, and he was 14 years old. And I was in my little office, and he said, Grandma, you could go on TikTok and teach my generation how to communicate better, and you can make a whole lot of money. He said, because you would be an influencer. Well, I didn't know any of those things. I didn't know what it meant, nothing. And of course, I had seen TikTok and I thought it was a waste of time. You can spend hours scrolling and laughing or crying or, just so engrossed into it that you don't get a lot of other things accomplished. Well, make a long story short, he convinced me. We went to the Dollar Tree down the street. He bought me this cute little red hat that I still have today. And he snapped this picture and we did the caption, and that was my introduction to TikTok. When I first got there, kids were brutal. I have to say that they were like, "Why are you here? Grandma, you should be on Facebook." And
Oh,
yeah, oh yeah, oh they were brutal. So my grandson kept saying, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Grandma, just do you, just do you." He said, "Eventually, those who want to be with you will be with you. Those who don't worry about it." So I kept pressing and kept pressing and kept pressing, and that's the short
and,
version
and here
of
and
it.
here you are.
Here I am, yeah. And I just hit 1 million followers about 3 weeks ago, which is interesting because I hit 1 million followers on Instagram
Hmm.
like months and months ago. And I thought because I'd been on TikTok first that I would hit 1 million first. Even
Hmm.
though I don't really get hung up on the numbers, I think it just surprised me that, it was Instagram first,
Hmm.
where I didn't do a whole lot, and then TikTok.
So interesting. I love that you are this boomer phenomena. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So your grandson was really sort of your cheerleader to help you sort of think through another way in which you could contribute to your family. So it really grew out of a need, but also the subject matter is, I think, somewhat unique. Let's talk a little bit about your interest in and love for words and vocabulary.
Well, I've always had an interest in vocabulary because I love to read. I did
Mm.
as a child. And I have a quick story. When I was in the second grade, Miss Malone used to have reading levels. And the highest level that you could be in was the bluebirds. The next to the highest level was the redbirds. I was in the redbirds and I didn't like that because I thought I was a good reader.
I should be a
And
bluebird.
yeah, I need to be in the bluebirds. I'm not in the redbirds. So what I would do was I would go to the library and I would get fourth and fifth grade books, bring them back to class, go to her desk and read them. And she didn't budge. She didn't budge. And then one day, and I don't even remember, I wish I could recall the book I read, just a passage out of the book. I went to her desk and I read it. And so when she called up the groups, she did green, yellow, red, and blue. So when she called up the red group, she didn't call me. And then she called up the Blue group and she called me. I was so excited.
I was just gonna say, you like taking that initiative was like she put you were next level.
Yeah, I was like that. And so, I mean, from that moment on, I just really engulfed myself into reading. And when I saw a word that I didn't understand, because there were a lot of words I didn't know, I would go to the dictionary and I would look up the word, and then I would go back and read the sentence again and try to figure out what the real meaning of that sentence
Mm.
was with that vocabulary word. And I
Hmm.
still do it today.
I think a lot of us do, and I love that. It's like that basic sort of phonics, science of reading kind of conversation happening before it really had terminology attached to it. I love this. So let's talk a little bit about advantages and strengths of having such a wide vocabulary. So, we live in the age of truncated sentences and acronyms everywhere. I work in government, so there's acronyms all over the place. But the young people, my nephew used to text me WYD. It took me forever to figure out what he was talking about,
You
right?
know,
So there's this language that I think young folks have. And what would you say to like the benefits of building a diverse vocabulary?
gives you the opportunity to talk to anybody on any level, anybody. And we with well, at least I didn't know it when I was growing up that I was code switching. I had no idea what that was. When I was with my friends, I spoke a certain way. When I was with the teachers, I spoke a certain way. And as I got older, when I was with, my colleagues or my boss or my supervisor, I spoke another way. I say when you have a vast vocabulary, you can talk to whether it's personal or professional. And it also gives you an opportunity to really be more in tune with what's going on around you because when you can see what's happening and articulate those thoughts and ideas with clarity, you won't have people confused over what it is you're trying to say. And
Mm,
I think that's a problem with a lot of people is either they try to throw out big words and they don't really know how they're supposed to be using those words, or they don't have the vocabulary that's strong enough to be
mhm.
able to say and express themselves so that they're clearly.
Let's talk a little bit about code switching because, and I imagine everyone here knows what that is, but if you don't, it's really like this idea of you speak differently when you're with different groups or populations so that you more seamlessly are absorbable within that community of people. I mean, that's a rough way of saying it, but I hope that made sense. Do you think that there is a value to being able to code switch, or do you see it more a hindrance to have to code switch?
You have to?
Hmm.
That's a great question. But, but I'm going to say this. I think you have to. I think you have to know how to do it. And I think you have to be comfortable with doing it.
Right.
Because if you cannot speak to your boss the same way you talk to your girlfriend or
Naturally.
a date, you just can't do it. And when you are writing emails or, trying to write someone, that's another ball game altogether, but you still have to have the language that's going to be appropriate for the occasion. My husband is a very intelligent man, but we are not going to sit in a romantic setting and start talking about the indomitable perseverance of what we're going through and how we're posiliquid. We're not doing that. We're just not doing those things. So you
It
do,
sounds like I think it could kill the vibe. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, that's really gonna kill the vibe, okay? So yeah, I
Well,
think you just
it's
have
it's
to.
interesting because when you hear people talk about or allude to, especially when it's academised, this idea of code switching, it's almost punitive the way that I often hear it spoken about. But I actually think it's really a value add in a lot of ways to be able to if you look at it less of switching codes, but really just learning how to talk to people within certain environments, I think it makes you more,
More
I think it,
personable,
more
relatable.
personable. Yes, I don't necessarily see it as punitive per se. That's just my personal opinion. I think I can code switch and tend to code switch very fluidly, but I've always done that. And I take that as more of a prideful thing rather than a punitive thing. So,
Right. I agree with you.
you mentioned earlier that when you were talking to your teacher, I think you said you mispronounced a word, you didn't know how to pronounce the word. And you made me think of my own story of my own quick story of reading something. I was in first grade and seeing a very big word for that time and not knowing how to pronounce it. And so learning to sound it out. And eventually I got to it. I think that there's some embarrassment from, I think, adults or people who should know how to read at a certain level and who don't, when it comes to mispronunciation. I personally am of the belief that you should never judge someone for mispronouncing a word because that says to me that they learned it from reading it, right? Rather than just hearing it. What would you say to people who are afraid of language or words because they have a fear of the mispronunciation or fear that they don't have sort of the academic acumen to like use those words?
Hmm. Huh. You want my real answer? No. You want me to
I
give
want
you
you to I want you
the
to give it to
sugar
me straight,
coated? Because
Auntie
I can
Bev.
give you the real answer, or I can give you the sugar coated answer. Well, this is what I will say. We all know, well, I don't know if we all know it, but public speaking is the number one fear that people have, just getting up and speaking in front of other people. One of the things I do as a writing consultant with my students, and I'm going to give a shout out to North Carolina Central University. One of the things I do with my students is I make them read their papers, their essays, their research papers out loud because they need to hear what they've written.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yes, let me tell you, I get pushback all the time.
I
I
bet
do.
you do.
But in the process, they get correction. They mispronounce the word. See, but if you've written that word and then you mispronounce it, then you've lifted that word somewhere else and it shouldn't be in there.
Mm,
And if you can't tell
mm,
me what the definition is, then why are you saying it? So
mm,
I'm saying, it's like a baby who learns to walk. You start small.
mhm,
There's no shame in picking up a Dr. Seuss book and reading it out loud. There's no shame in there. And there's no shame in gradually just getting to the level where you will become more comfortable. I believe reading out loud is just really important because it allows you to hear what you're saying and it allows you to get through the struggling of the enunciation or the pronunciation.
mhm,
That's why, and I don't know if this is a shameless promotion, but that's one of the reasons I created the Word Up dictionaries because what I wanted to do was create words that I know you would use in your conversations personally and professionally, but also to give you the phonetic way of pronouncing those words.
mhm,
So that when you look at the word and you say, oh, okay, I don't know what that word is, but now I see the phonetic spelling, so I can sound it out and move that way.
mhm.
Yeah. I don't know if that really answers the question, but yeah,
No, it does. It does. And you remind me of a gentleman we had on about a year or so ago. His name is Oliver James. Have you heard of him yet?
I have not.
He is an adult. He is a TikToker influencer.
Okay. Okay.
And he's this wonderfully gifted man, young man, I think he's in his 30s, who came onto TikTok to say, listen, I'm an adult and I was basically socially promoted. Those are my words, not his. And I don't know how to read, right? He didn't know how to read at 30 years old. So what he did, Auntie Bev, is he started to commit to learning how to read via the little alphabet books, little phonic books that we give, kindergartners or first
Yeah.
grade. And he was vulnerable enough to do this on TikTok. He's got, I think at the last count, 5 or 6 million followers, and
Wow.
he is a fluent reader now at this point, but it's been over the course of a couple of years. So, when you talk about confidence and you talk about taking that sort of next step to have that level of vulnerability, I just want to always talk about this young man, this Oliver James, because he's got such a phenomenal story that a lot of kids, unfortunately, have been socially promoted and they don't necessarily have the skill set that they likely should as an adult. So I just
Let me
want to make
just
sure you knew who he was.
let me just share this with you. My very first client was a 48-year-old man who sent me a message on TikTok and asked me if I would coach him.
Mm,
And I didn't know his age or anything at the time. So I asked him to give me his number. I called him and he told me his story. He did not learn to read properly. He's 48 years old. He just got this really hot shot job with the government and he wanted to be presentable and he was so terrified that he wasn't going to be able to pull it off. So I worked with him and it's an Oliver James story. Now I see him. Oh my God. I'm like, I take total credit for that. Okay. I'm like,
you're
yes,
like,
I take the credit for that. He's just phenomenal now. He's doing these TikToks. He speaks so well. His emails, I mean, just everything. But I think that you have to, first of all, come to terms with where your weaknesses are and
mm,
accept them. And
hmm.
once you accept where your weaknesses are, you can work on them.
No, that's that courage,
Yeah,
right?
you got to.
Courage to be vulnerable.
Yes. So that's what Oliver did, and that's what I'm not going to mention his name because
This other young
I don't
man,
want me to do that. But
this other young 48-year-old man. Yes,
yeah,
indeed.
yes.
No, I understand that. And so let's talk a little. You said you develop, well, you didn't say this, but I'm going to ask you this question. How do you develop confidence to deploy more extravagant or sort of out of the ordinary words? I think this is always another thing that people feel very sort of sensitive about because you want to use the word properly. But how do you remember all these big words? And then how do you feel like the best way to exercise those words?
That's a great question. And let me explain it this way. I just talked to a group about this not long ago, and I'm going to use myself as an example. Not every word I deliver you're going to receive. It's not going to be in your vocabulary. Maybe posiliquent is not something you're ever going to say to anybody. You have
Likely
to,
not for me, by the way.
yeah. But anyway, the point is that pick and choose what words you read or hear that you want to add to your vernacular. You don't have to have every word. You don't have to have, 100,000 words. Just pick the words. If you hear the word impeccable and you heard it in a sentence, and then you look it up in the dictionary and it matches whatever that person said, and you want to use that word, then write it down. I have tons of journals around the house of words that I have written down since, oh my God, like since high school. Write it down and then find ways to use the word. But that's just don't use a word because it's a big word. Use the word that's going to be appropriate for what you are trying to say in a conversation. And that's why I think you have to pick and choose, not just randomly say, okay, yeah, well, I want to use the word indomitable because I heard somebody else say it and it sounded like a really big word. No, if it doesn't fit, then don't use it.
I think that's common sense advice. I like that. So you are very clearly a wonderful communicator. I have a feeling communicating and language has never been a challenge for you. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Um, what do you think it means to be a good communicator? What kinds of skills do you think are necessary to be a good communicator?
Hmm. You're asking some really good questions. What does it take to be a good communicator? Well, for me, because I'm going to just use me as an example here. I think you need to be personable. I believe you need to never meet a stranger. I believe that you need to read. And when I say read, I mean read to comprehend. Not just read to comprehend. You need to be around people who can elevate you with their conversation. Because there's a quote that for years I used to say, surround yourself with brilliance and then rise to the occasion.
I was just thinking I was going to share this one with you, Auntie Bev, I want to say it's Confucius. I might be mistaking that, but Confucius says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right. That's right.
Same
That's right.
thing,
That's
right?
right. That's it. That's right. So I think that because and I tell my grandson this and I told my daughter this all the time. Your environment kind of dictates how you'll be. If you're hanging around the crowd that is always swearing all the time, then that's kind of like where you are. But if you're around people who are, you know, talking in a manner and you're like, well, I don't really know what the word means, but if I keep listening, I'll decipher what it means. Those are the people you want to be around. So that's what I would say. It has worked for me. It may not work for everyone else. And the other thing too, and I'm kind of going sideways a little bit here. I live in the South now, so my friends in the North say, "Oh, you have that Southern drawl." The people down here say I talk like a Yankee, so I'm not real sure where
You
I
don't
am.
know.
Yeah, I don't know where I am. But the thing of it is that I don't get hung up on how people sound
Mm,
as much as are you using the words correctly.
mhm,
I know people who have very thick Southern drawls, but they're some of the most articulate people that I know.
mhm.
And then I know people who, they think that they're very well spoken, but then,
Right.
really they're not.
That's right.
So, I want to throw that out there because I think I do something on social media called the pronunciation challenge, and I always
Mhm,
tell everyone it's no right or wrong answer. It depends on, where you grew up in the country, and that dictates, how you will say the words you say. But I think a lot of people are really self-conscious of that. I think more
mhm.
so South than they are in other parts of the country.
It's interesting that you say that because I grew up in Michigan, and the moment I hear a Midwestern accent, I can hear,
You
I can
know it.
hear it, right? But it's interesting that you say the South because here in Los Angeles, naturally, we have classes dedicated to learning to speak sort of that sort of Midwestern drawl, whatever that. I mean, you used to be on, I think you said you were on the news at some point, that sort of middle
That's the
country.
standard. Yeah, that's the
Yeah, that's right.
standard. Yeah.
Teaching people the standard.
Yeah.
Um, because we're in the creative economy and a lot of people are here to be on TV or on social media. So let me ask you, do you have a favorite word or words? Is there some one that you'd like to share with us?
I do. I have a couple of favorite words. Indomitable. I've said that a few times. Indomitable, it's an adjective and it means having a never give up spirit. So sometimes, when I'm having a tough day or a tough start to my day, I will say I am indomitable, just to remind myself that the power is still within me and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to give up no matter what the situation is.
Mm.
The other word is equanimity. Now, some people pronounce it equanimity. I
Uh-huh.
say equanimity, and that means remaining peaceful in spite of the chaos around you. I will maintain my equanimity, even though the children are getting on my nerves. I will maintain my equanimity, even though my boss is driving me crazy. So those two words kind of go
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
flow in my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a part of like my meditation, my affirmations.
Those are great words, by the way, and maybe I'll have to co-opt those from you. But it is, in times of turbulence and in times of uneasiness or distress or, when things are really sort of awry, I think it is important to kind of like come back to the feeling or the words to
Yes.
center oneself so that
Yes.
you can remain measured enough to be able to speak to different people at different times. So all of this kind of plays back into it. So indomitable and equanimity.
Equanimity. Yeah. However you choose E or eh.
Uh,
Equanimity,
thank
equanimity.
you. Thank you. My team put it in the chat.
Yes.
Equanimity.
That's exactly what it
Um,
is. That mental calmness.
yes, I love that. So I'm notorious for getting words wrong. What are some of the words or usages that you see a lot of people getting wrong or misusing more often?
Well, I did this word. This is probably a year ago, and I could probably do this one every couple of weeks. Copacetic.
Oh, yes.
Copacetic. Copacetic. It's not even copacetic. It's copacetic. And I've heard, and I think that, mostly in my community, people think they're really cool when they say everything is copacetic, man. No, that's not even the right word. Okay. So that's one word for sure. The most
Wait, no, but let's get this right. Copacetic with a T or copacetic
copacetic
without the extra T.
without the extra T.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, I don't want to challenge Auntie Bev, but
No,
did
no, no,
I
no,
hear
no,
that
no.
right?
Not, there's no T there. But that's what you hear. That's what you hear a
Totally,
lot. No, there's no
totally.
T. The most commonly misspelled word in writing is your.
Yes,
People spell Y-O-U-R, welcome.
yes,
Okay, I don't even
yes.
understand how you do.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it, and I correct people. I am notorious for
Or then and
correcting
then. That's another one
then and then. Yes,
that
yes.
drives me up the wall.
So, and then not understanding. Well, there's a lot of things,
There's a,
but
yeah.
affect effect. So, using,
Oh, yeah, I get those ones wrong
and
too.
so and then this is the thing I tell people, we're all judged by four things in life. All of us, you, me, your mother, your father, my mother, my father, my grandparents, how we act, how we look, how we speak, and how we write. So when you're writing, it says something about you. When you're speaking, it says something about you. When even before you open your mouth and I look at you and your appearance and I'm making a judgment call. Somebody is judging something about you. And your behavior. And these are things I really, stress with young people with those things. But yeah, how we speak and how we write, I mean, it says a lot. And I'm one of those people who will say, I'll correct you. They don't like it, but I will correct you. There's a period there. There's no such I mean, run-on sentences. Act like you're, really writing someone you know. You don't have to give me a period apostrophe. Do you know what that is? Do you know what an exclamation point is? I mean, there's just so many things, and I think social media has made a lot of people lazy.
That's what I was trying to kind of give a little grace around these young people who have this new sort of vocabulary, this new lexicon that is not of your generation. I think I might be a hybrid generation, or if I'm not, at least I have a 10-year-old, so I'm learning it. I do think there has to be some grace around sort of this transitional language that's happening. But because it's transitional, it seems that we have to do a better job at teaching them sort of the right way and then the short way.
And that's where the
Um,
code switching comes in. That's
yes,
exactly
that's
where it
yes.
comes in. My grandson just sent me a whole list of words that they say. And I went through the
I've
list.
seen this on the TikTok.
Yes, yes. I saw the list and I said, oh my God, really? That wasn't the word. I mean, we used that word for something else back then. Y'all say, yeah. So I know language evolves. I get that. But I also want young people to know that when you step into the room of a professional setting, those aren't words that you should have in your vocabulary bank.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And just to do a shameless plug on our side, we have a program called Adult 101, where we don't focus so much on language, but we focus in on teaching young people how to be in conversation, how to have a conversation, how to have these basic sort of interaction skills and things like including like building a resume and how to dress for an interview, like all of those sort of life skills that I think a lot of young people just don't have that ability, that tacit environment where they've learned those things. And so we step in that way. And I think that's kind of that's what I'm gleaning from what you're saying, is that you have to have both. You have to learn the way, and then, you can use your sort of shorthand or colloquial speak with your friends.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things that I tried to be an advocate for, and I kind of just gave up on it, is teaching young people vocabulary. Why can't that be a part of a curriculum? Why can't you have a curriculum where kids just sit and they learn vocabulary? They learn not to spell it. Yeah, you need to know how to spell, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you use these words in a sentence?
Mm-hmm.
How do you, if you need to ask the teacher something, how do you articulate that using one of those words that's on your vocabulary word list?
Well, let me ask you, Auntie Bev, like, what's a suggestion? Because I'm sure we have some parents in here. Like, how do we help young people build their vocabulary? I shouldn't even say young people. How do we help people build their vocabulary, become comfortable, and practice these sort of communication skills? Like, what are some suggestions?
To me, it all goes back to reading. You pick up a book and you read a sentence and you don't know what that word is in that sentence, write that word down, look that word up, and then go back and then plug in the definition so that you comprehend what the sentence is. If you can't read and comprehend,
Mm-hmm.
you can't be successful. I mean, you just can't be. I just,
Well,
I can't say enough about reading. Let's
yeah,
just
well, listen, I did not goat her. I want everyone to know in the audience that the librarian did not convince her to say that
no, they
reading
know
is
you
the
didn't.
way.
If
That
you
was
saw
all
my
her.
office, you would see I have tons of books in here. No, no, I
That's
read.
right. But I agree with you. So again, I can speak from experience. I have a younger child who's 10, and she's got an extraordinary vocabulary. And a lot of it is because she likes to read. And
To
so
read.
I hear her each year, I hear her start to use language that Auntie Bev, I go, oh, you know that
Yeah.
word? Right?
Yes.
And so you see them and they become more confident in using these words and
Yeah.
kind of venturing out into those deeper waters, bigger words, compound words, things like that. So I couldn't agree with you more. I learn and am reminded daily of how important it is to have young people read, not only with the work that we do here at the library, but because I'm a parent. What do you say to this? We're living in a very precarious moment politically, a very polarized environment. How do you think vocabulary can be used to help broaden understanding of civil discourse, or even if we do not agree or we are on two different sides of the fence? How do you think language and words can help bridge, for lack of a better way of saying it, bridge a communication gap?
That's another. You're asking some really good questions. You know that.
Look,
But
you got to give it to the team. The marketing team's great.
here's what you're missing. It's all about the tone. Because I
Mm,
can say a lot of things to you, and depending on the tone in which I deliver it to you,
yeah.
is how you're going to receive it.
Tone and cadence. Got you. Say
So,
more.
yeah. So, yeah. So I'm just saying, if I'm constantly yelling and screaming at you because I don't agree with your position on whatever it is, what are you going to do? You're either going to tune me out or you're going to yell and scream at me back.
Yeah.
But if I can say, I think that perhaps we are moving into a kakistocracy, and maybe this is something that we should look at because we've always been in a democracy, and I
Mhm.
think that that is what we all as Americans want, is to be in a democratic society. Now, if I had said, you know what, I think we're in a heckastocracy and I'm so sick of it and the democracy to hell, okay. Now, you see the difference?
I certainly do.
Okay, so now you're more, now you may not know what kakistocracy is. And if you don't, you'll ask me. But you know what democracy is. So you got to know that, well, we're moving into a kakistocracy. So that must be something
That's the
negative.
opposite of, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you kind of, and then that opens up the opportunity for positive, engaging dialogue.
And so, I think this is the big thing that libraries try to do, is to create an environment of civil discourse, um, an invitation to communicate and to, I'm going to say this in honor of my grandmother, though I want you to know, I know that it's not a real word, but an invitation to conversate,
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's not a
right?
word, but okay, I got
I
you.
know it's not. I preface it, but giving people the opportunity or the invitation to have conversations around very difficult subject matter that we might inherently be on the opposite sides of.
Right,
But I think your point is, what I take from what you say is, if you are open enough to be leveled in your delivery, there's an opportunity for a conversation, whereas
right.
there may not be if you're up here.
Because I think even in heated conversations,
Mm-hmm.
the level-headed one, you can talk somebody off the ledge. I believe you, I really believe you can. I've been in situations in newsroom meetings where people were screaming at each other over, we should choose this news story over one other news story. And then the mom comes in, and then all of a sudden, that is becomes the prevailing, I guess, ambiance of that room. Because now, somebody is being level-headed, being calm, quiet, but still getting their point across, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to yelling and screaming at everybody.
That's right. That's right. How have libraries impacted your life?
Oh my God. Let me tell you something. So we had a neighborhood library, right?
Mhm.
And two
Eh,
things
And where did you grow up again?
in Canton, Ohio.
Canton, Ohio. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
And the library, I mean, it was safe enough that
Hmm.
I could walk to the library. We went to the library as a class twice a week, and we could pick out books. On Saturdays, I'd get my couple of my friends in the neighborhood, and we'd walk to the library, and the librarian knew us and kind of knew our likes. They would have books for us, you might like
Right.
this book, and they kind of give you a little taste of what the book is about. So you're excited and you want to check out the book. I was at the library. I know. I mean, if I could have gone every day, I would have gone every day.
Oh, I love
I
that.
I love the librarian because she really took an interest in helping us to find books that we would enjoy, not just
Mm.
books to read. See, and I
Hmm.
think this is, and I'm gonna go down a little road here. I think the reason that a lot of kids struggle, or some kids struggle with books, is because they don't enjoy the books they're reading.
You're preaching to
It's
the choir.
dumb.
I agree. I 100% agree.
So I think the librarians that we had, as they got to know us, they kind of knew. And I, I I just can't say enough. And every time I moved, with my job, I always wanted to find out where the library was.
That's right.
Because if I needed to go to the library, for my job, especially to research or something,
Hmm.
or just to go pick out a book and
Hmm.
just read it. So
Hmm.
yeah, and now that I'm an author, I love it because
You want to go see if your book is there?
I can put my books in the library. Okay.
Rolling through the stacks. I don't see any Mahomes here.
Oh yeah.
I love that story because I have a very similar story, but there are, with all the things that libraries do these days, I want you to know that that story that you just shared with us, where the young person comes in and the librarian has pulled out the book for them,
Yes,
that still
yes.
happens today. It
Does it
happens at the
really?
West Hollywood Library. one of our libraries, and
Today.
our daughter, I take my daughter there, and she doesn't even talk to me. She beelines the children's librarian, right? Because they have a relationship. She remembers what she checked
Yes.
out before, and she's like,
Yes.
"Did you like it? You didn't like it? Why don't you try this one?" There's that
Yes.
interaction.
Yes.
I can't speak more highly of children's librarians. I think they're some of the best people on the planet, and I don't just say that because I work with a bunch of them. Let me close by asking you what you're reading right now so I can get to some of the questions that our audience is asking. What are you reading right now, Auntie Bev?
Well, right now, I'm reading for the second time this year, As a Man Thinketh.
Okay.
I read that book. I try to read that
Is
book.
that who is that?
I got it right here. I was like, it's a really thin book. James Allen,
Okay, got you. All
As a
right.
Man Thinketh. It's very thin. I
Thank you,
mean,
Christina.
it's all of I don't know, it's like so many short pages. But anyway,
Which is why you've been able to read it again.
yes, I read that book to keep me centered and keep me grounded.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm going
Mm-hmm.
through and it's, challenges are just overwhelming, I go back to this book just to kind of say, okay, everything is going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I found the word vicissitudes. I had not,
Vicissitude.
yes, I had never seen that word in a book. Never seen the
Okay.
word in a book. And so I said it, and I said, first I thought it was pronounced vicissitudes because of the VICC.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, but no, that doesn't sound, that doesn't sound right as a word. So then I went to Google it and they said vicissitudes. And then I saw the definition. And then I went back, as I said earlier, I went back and I placed the definition in the sentence so that I understood the context of what he was saying in that
Uh-huh.
particular section. So yeah, this is my book.
I love it. Auntie Bev, give us the name of one or two of your books before I move on to our questions.
Okay, well, the last one that I just wrote was How to Cuss with Class.
Oh, that's the one
Uh,
I saw.
a guide to help you change that was some effed up BS language about the 2024 election. So these are all vocabulary words for that civil discourse where you can
That's right.
talk with someone and have a really very nice conversation. And I have the word up vocabulary dictionaries that I created last year. I took on the challenge. Someone wanted me to condense something that they could have. And I created the dictionary. I said, if Merriam-Webster can do it, why can't Auntie Babs?
That's right. Miriam was, why not?
Yeah,
I
why
mean,
not, right?
you
So
can
yeah,
sit around asking why, but then you can ask yourself, why not? Here's a great question from the audience. I love exclamation marks. My boss is younger than me and says it's passive aggressive. How is that so?
yeah, well, that might be a generational thing. Exclamation points are just that. They exclaim. That shows your excitement, your enthusiasm for something. It was a sunny day today. Exclamation point. I loved it. But I'm old school. So I use exclamation points because I want you to know how excited I am about something either you've said or I'm saying. Does that help?
I think so. And I do think it might be a generational thing. It's interesting because I tend to see more exclamation points in people younger than me rather than the opposite way around. But that's
I
just
don't
my
see
thought.
any.
Oh,
I don't see periods. I don't see commas. I don't
really?
see exclamation points. I don't see anything.
Zip, zero. Please comment on the advice attributed to Mark Twain. Don't use a $5. Oh, yeah, I like this one. Don't use a $5 when 50-cent word will do.
I agree.
What's your thought around that?
I agree. I agree. You and
The end.
if you can keep it simple, keep it simple. And then once again, you have to know the audience to whom you're speaking.
That's right.
If that is a 50-cent audience, then speak to them in 50-cent language. But if it's a $10 audience, you better have some $10 words in
You
your
should be
pocket.
prepared for that.
Yes.
Once again, the code switch.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm totally in agreement, 50 cents, but you know what? Have some $10 words in your back pocket just in case somebody comes up in the conversation and you need to, talk to them on a different level.
I love it. How did you start your first building vocabulary and remembering your words?
How did I, from the very beginning?
That's what I interpret that to mean, yes.
Reading. I would read a book and I would see a word that I did not know. I wrote the word down. I went to the dictionary. I looked up the word, and then I went back to the what I was reading to try to make sure I could understand it in its context. And then as a younger person, I was trying to always that I knew the word. Now
That's
it's
right.
not so much. I'm not, that I'm not trying to do that anymore. But that was one of the ways that helped me retain those
Hmm.
words because I was, call me a smart aleck if you want to, but I wanted to impress you that I knew
Hmm.
the word and I could use like I did with my teacher.
That's right.
And
It got to blue level.
and got
Yes.
to blue level. That's right. And
Yes.
I stayed on blue. I just coasted right on through, right? But that's how it worked for me. And I'm a visual and an auditory learner. So I have
Same.
to see it and I have to hear it.
I
I
love
hope
it.
that answers the question.
I think it did. Auntie Bev, you have been absolutely a pleasure and a gift. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you so
Hopefully we
very
can have
much.
you back.
Thank you very much. I have
Well,
enjoyed
and
this.
I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know I didn't get to all your questions, but I am right on time. I'm determined because she is jet lagged and needs to go to bed because it's
Yes.
10 o'clock where she's at. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you at the next Heart in Hand. Thank you so much. Take good care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.